Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really unlocking something powerful for anyone aiming for high IELTS scores, or honestly, just clearer communication in general, English grammar. And look, it's not just about being correct. It's about making your message truly effective, especially, under pressure.
Exactly.
We've got this fantastic resource as our guide today, IELTS Grammar.pdf. It's incredibly thorough, covers everything from basic tenses right through to complex sentence structures.
It really does.
So our mission here is to pull out the most practical, maybe even surprising, tips and strategies from this guide. We want to show you how grammar mistakes can actually become opportunities if you understand the mechanics.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I think, is how the guide frames it. It's not just grammar as a set of rules you have to sort of tick off. It's presented as a toolkit, a way to convey complex thoughts with real precision, with nuance. And that's vital in a high-stakes situation like IELTS.
Right.
It really highlights that good grammar isn't just about avoiding errors. It's about strategically using structure to make your point land effectively.
It's easy to think, oh, grammar, it's just one part of the test. But this guide really makes you sit up and take notice. It says grammar is responsible for a full 25% of the marks in both writing and speaking.
A quarter of the score. That's huge.
It really is. It shows just how critical it is to get this right. And the guide points out a really common issue, doesn't it?
The pressure pitfall.
Yeah, candidates know the grammar. Maybe they studied it for ages. But under exam pressure, they just don't use the structures effectively. Or they forget them.
Precisely, because they haven't practiced using them strategically. It leads to this important distinction the guide makes. What's the grammar needed for, say, an IELTS 5.5 or 6 versus what you need for a 7 or higher?
Okay, yeah. What is the difference?
Well, for that 5.56 band, the focus is largely on minimizing errors, just trying not to make too many mistakes with basic structures. But for those higher scores, you have to go beyond just damage control. You need to actively create better grammar. And that comes down to two key things the examiners are looking for: grammatical range and accuracy.
Range and accuracy.
Range means confidently using a variety of structures. Simple sentences, yes, but also different types of complex sentences, not just showing off, but using them naturally.
And accuracy.
Accuracy is about using those structures correctly, obviously, but also effectively. Does the grammar actually help convey your meaning clearly and precisely? And let's not forget, grammar isn't just for the productive skills, speaking and writing.
Oh, good point.
A strong understanding helps immensely in the listening and reading tests, too, for picking up on nuances, relationships between ideas. It all connects.
Okay, so we get it. Grammar is crucial, a massive chunk of the score. Let's get into the nuts and bolts then. The absolute foundation. Tenses. The guide lists all 12. Present simple, past perfect, continuous, the whole lot. But just seeing that list can be overwhelming. What does it actually mean for you, the test taker?
Yeah.
Where should you focus your energy?
That's the key question. And the guide offers a really practical perspective here, instead of trying to memorize the rules for all 12 forms in isolation.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. The better approach is understanding the 4 core aspects: simple, perfect, continuous, and perfect continuous. Getting your head around how these aspects function, how they let you paint different pictures of time, that's the real shortcut.
Okay, break that down for us. What are these aspects really doing?
Right. So simple tenses. Think of these as your baseline. Facts, single completed actions. Past simple. He sent the order yesterday. Done. Present simple. The conference is in London. A fact. Straightforward.
Got it. Simple is simple.
Pretty much. Then continuous tenses, sometimes called progressive. These show an action in progress, ongoing, unfinished. I am attending the conference this week. It's happening around now. It gives that sense of duration or incompletion. Now, perfect tenses. This is where it gets a bit more strategic for IELTS. They connect 2 points in time, usually the past and the present. Present, perfect. She has completed the negotiations. The action is finished, yes, but it connects to now. It has present relevance. The guide points out this connection is really important for building arguments.
Ah, okay. Connecting past to present relevance.
Exactly. And finally, perfect continuous tenses. These really emphasize the duration of an action, often answering how long. She has been teaching here for 10 years, started in the past, continues up to the present. Very useful in the speaking test when talking about your experience, your job, things like that.
So it's less about memorizing 12 names and more about understanding these 4 functions: simple fact, ongoing action, past connected to present, and duration.
Precisely. Mastering those functions gives you the flexibility you need.
Okay, moving beyond those core tenses, the guide gets into tools that add, well, real color and nuance to your language.
Mm.
Modal verbs and conditional,
These are your tools for expressing attitude, really.
right? Certainty, possibility, hypothetical situations, really important stuff for sounding, well, more sophisticated. How could you leverage these in the exam?
Well, take modal verbs first. What's fascinating and what the guide highlights well is how they let you signal different levels of certainty.
Okay.
So if you say, my code might be ready by Thursday, that's pretty low certainty, maybe like 25% chance the guide suggests.
Right.
Change that to my code may be ready. Slightly more certain, maybe 25–50%. But if you say my code must be ready or has to be ready, now you're talking high certainty, obligation. Using these accurately shows control and precision in expressing your opinions or predictions. Very important for IELTS.
And the guide picks out some specific modals that people often trip up on.
Yes, definitely. Should and shouldn't, for instance, obviously used for advice, you should renegotiate. But they're also great for expressing past regrets or unfulfilled expectations. We should have presented the product range earlier. That adds a layer of critical reflection.
Ah, okay, that's a more advanced use.
Exactly. And then could and would. Could isn't just the past of can't. Yes, in the past I could understand, but it's also key for future possibility. I could meet the customer Friday. And crucially, polite requests. Could you explain the strategy, please? Much softer than can you.
Right, politeness counts.
It does. And would. Of course, polite offers. Would you like me to start? But its main job is in hypothetical situations, usually with if. If I were the head of sales, I would make changes. Mastering these subtleties really elevates your speaking and writing.
Okay, and that brings us neatly to conditionals, using if. Essential for cause and effect, imagining different scenarios.
Absolutely key for analytical writing and discussing possibilities in speaking. The guide breaks them down by function, which is helpful. You start with type 0 general truths. If you write code carefully, bugs are reduced. Always true.
Simple enough.
Then type 1 possible, likely future events. If I give the customer what they want, they will write new orders. Real possibility. Type 2 moves into the hypothetical, the possible but unlikely. If I received a huge order, I would buy the team cakes. Dreaming a little, maybe? Uses past tense form, but refers to present future.
Right, the dreaming conditional.
Kind of. And type 3 is about the impossible past, looking back and imagining a different outcome. If I had joined the meeting, I would have argued my case. But you didn't join, so you couldn't argue. It's about regret or speculating on past alternatives.
That's powerful for analysis.
Very. And the guide also mentions conditional linkers beyond just if. Words like even if, only if, provided unless.
More advanced tools.
Exactly. They allow for more precise conditions, like we will be late unless we start the project today. It sets a very specific, single condition for avoiding lateness. Using these correctly really signals advanced grammatical control.
So we've got tenses, modals, conditionals, all these ingredients. How do we actually put them together into sentences that, work, that land effectively? The guide talks about structure, starting with a fundamental choice. Active versus passive voice.
Right. And the key takeaway from the guide on passive voice isn't that it's inherently better, but that it's a strategic choice, its main use, to sound more formal, or when the action is more important than who did it.
Okay.
So, active. I present a strategy. Simple, direct, passive. A strategy is presented. It feels a bit more detached, more formal, often used in academic or report writing.
And it's formed with to be plus the past participle, like is presented, was taken, has been decided.
Exactly. The form is straightforward. The skill is knowing when to use it for the right effect. Important for IELTS Task 1 academic writing, for example, describing processes.
Makes sense. And beyond voice, what about the basic building blocks, sentence construction?
Yeah, this is fundamental. English relies really heavily on word order, unlike some languages where endings change. In English, subject plus verb plus object, SVO, is king. Getting that order right is critical for basic clarity.
SVO, got it.
But to show range, you need more than just simple sentences. The guide talks about moving from simple sentences, one independent clause, one complete thought, to compound sentences.
That's joining two simple sentences.
Right, usually with a coordinating conjunction like and or but or maybe a semicolon. I am a product manager and Anne is a project manager. Two related, complete ideas joined together.
Okay.
But the real power for IELTS comes with complex sentences. These aren't just long sentences. They're sentences that show relationships between ideas, comparison, contrast, reason, purpose, concession. They usually involve different types of clauses.
Like relative clauses. The guide mentions those.
Yes, relative clauses are a fantastic tool. They start with words like that, which, who, or whom, and they add extra information about a noun without starting a whole new sentence.
Can you give that example again?
Sure. The team has a major technical problem which could delay the whole project. That which clause adds crucial information about the problem concisely. Mastering these structures allows you to express complex thoughts efficiently, a hallmark of high-level communication.
Okay, so we've built the structure. Now for the polish.
Yeah.
Those sometimes small details that can make a huge difference in clarity and ultimately your score. The guide covers quite a few. What do you think are the most impactful ones for IELTS candidates to really focus on? The ones that often get overlooked.
That's a great way to put it, the polishing elements. I'd say paraphrasing is absolutely vital. The guide stresses this for both speaking and writing.
And that's more than just swapping synonyms.
Well, much more. It's about explaining an idea, using your own words, maybe changing the sentence structure, reformulation, but crucially without changing the original meaning. It demonstrates vocabulary breadth and flexibility. Examiners look for this. Can you talk about the same idea in different ways? Avoid repetition.
Okay, paraphrasing is key. What else?
Secondly, definitely conjunctions and linking words. These are like the signposts in your communication. They signal relationships. Addition, furthermore, cause-effect, consequently as a result, comparison, similarly, contrast, however, on the other hand, concession, although. Using these correctly is fundamental for cohesion and coherence, two key marking criteria in IELTS writing and speaking.
Right, they guide the reader or listener through your argument.
Exactly. And don't forget the correlative conjunctions, pairs like both dot and either dot or, not only, but also bun. We need to improve not only speed, but also accuracy. They create elegant connections.
Good one. Okay, paraphrasing linkers. Anything else crucial?
I'd highlight articles A and B. They seem so small, but misuse them, and it immediately sounds unnatural.
Yeah, those can be tricky.
Everyone gets tripped up. The guide clarifies A versus an depends on the sound of the next word. An hour, because an hour starts with a vowel sound, not just the letter. But the real devil is in the detail with the. Knowing when to use it for specific items versus when not to use it for general concepts. And those tricky geographical rules.
Ah, yes. No, the, for most countries or cities, France, London, but use the for rivers, the Thames, mountain ranges, the Alps, seas, the Mediterranean.
Precisely. Getting those small article rules right demonstrates real precision. It's a subtle sign of a high level of English proficiency.
So those three paraphrasing, linking words, and articles offer big returns for focus.
I think so. Obviously, things like verb agreement, singular subject, singular verb, she speaks, plural subject, plural verb, they speak, prepositions in, n, adjectives for description, pronouns to avoid repetition, they're all foundational. But mastering the strategic use of paraphrasing, conjunctions, and articles can really lift your performance.
Wow. We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
From understanding why grammar is 25% of your score, through tenses, modals, sentence structure, right down to those crucial articles and conjunctions. It's really clear, isn't it? Grammar isn't just this, dusty old rule book. It's the actual framework you use to build powerful, clear, persuasive messages.
Absolutely.
So thinking about the listener, what's the big takeaway here? The guide seems to suggest that just avoiding mistakes is, well, only half the battle.
That's right. Avoiding errors gets you to a certain level, a competent level, but truly understanding and, more importantly, applying that grammatical range and accuracy we talked about, that's what unlocks the higher scores. That's what leads to truly effective communication in the exam and, frankly, everywhere else, too.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, this guide we used, it lists so many extra resources, videos, exercises, practice tests. It really emphasizes that mastering grammar isn't a one-off task, is it?
Not at all. It's an ongoing journey, a process of continuous refinement. The strategies we've touched on today are powerful starting points, but there's always more depth to explore. Which brings up an interesting thought, perhaps. In our world today, with so much digital communication, short messages, emojis, sometimes precision seems less important than speed.
True.
So in that context, how much more valuable does a really solid, nuanced grasp of grammar actually become? Does it make you stand out even more when you can express yourself with real clarity and impact?
That's a fascinating question to ponder, something for you to think about. Keep diving in, keep practicing, and keep working on making your message count. That's all for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.